Hey everyone, Jeff with Ajabu Accounting here, and today we're going to be going over how to set up your chart of accounts as a real estate investor in Xero. Now, a lot of real estate investors use QuickBooks, it's the big elephant in the room. However, Xero is an accounting software that's going to be sufficient to meet the needs of most real estate investors, and I'm really excited to share with you how you can utilize this accounting software for your business needs. So stick with me here while I go through the process of setting up your chart of accounts. All right, so now we are in the Xero dashboard. So this is where we're going to start. And so in order to get to the chart of accounts, what we do is we click this tab that says accounting, and then we're going to go down toward advanced. And right here where it says chart of accounts, this is where we're going to begin. So once we're in the chart of accounts, so how you have to consider how do we want to structure everything for our real estate investing business? And what I would suggest would be best for most property investors would be to structure it in a way that could be easy to transfer over to your tax form. So what we can do is we can ultimately copy these lines on Form 8825, which is what most real estate investors will have to fill out come tax time. And as you can see, it has the rental real estate income, rental real estate expenses, and we could just break everything line by line from there. So if we go into the chart of accounts, so what we should do when we structure this is we should ultimately take advantage of some of the accounts that are already in there that we can't delete. So as you can see, some of these accounts that are in here have this lockbox, so we can't delete them. So one of those things that we cannot delete is cost of goods sold. So if we go to cost of goods sold, just hit enter there. So we're going to ultimately treat these as a sub-account of cost of goods sold. So as you can see, cost of goods sold advertising, cost of goods sold auto and travel. And we want to make sure that our numbering code is efficient. So the one thing you need to know about Xero is that they don't allow for sub-accounts like QuickBooks, right? So in order to get around this, we can do a few different things. One of them is going to be having essentially a naming convention like this, to where you would have the parent account in the title, followed by the sub account after it. And then what I would do for the numbering code is I would break down everything into increments of 100. So maybe you'll have a checking account 100, a credit card account 200, incremented up one by 100. So that way everything after 100 can essentially be a de facto sub account. So as you can see, we have 500, 501, 502, 503. This is going to be a lot easier in terms of structuring your chart of accounts in Xero and make everything run a lot more seamlessly and smooth. So if we break everything down here, there's around it looks like from 3 to 14, that's around 11 items on the chart on this tax form. So if we go back to Xero, we ultimately structured it to where everything is going to be matching up in some regards. So, but then we go to utilities, right? So, sometimes people may want to break things down more specifically by utilities, because, with utilities, you have, gas, electric, water, you have different types of expenses that are related to utilities. So because Xero doesn't allow a sub account, they also don't allow a sub account of a sub account, right? So how can we get around that? Well, we can essentially do the same thing, cost of goods sold, utilities dash gas. So, or cost of goods sold, utilities dash electric. So that way we're breaking it down even more. So that way we can ultimately be a little bit more precise in where these expenses are coming from and how to structure everything on a per property basis. So when creating an account on Xero, and I can break that down for you really quick, it's very simple. We just go to add account. And what we do is, and actually in the account type, there's going to be four different types of expense categories in Xero, and I'll show you what they are. They are depreciation, direct costs, expense, and overhead. So actually in the chart of accounts that we have set up, I'll show you after this is done, we used one of these at least once. Now, in terms of how you want to structure this for your business, it is somewhat subjective, so feel free to make a few minor tweaks if you deem necessary. But everything should be able to be filed under one of those four expense categories, and then you just give it a code, take it over where you left off, and then just do cost of goods sold, and then I'll just say like additional expense, just to keep it easy, right? And then you can have an optional description. And this is important. It's going to default to tax on purchase. So we just want to put 0% tax because, we don't want to throw the numbers off. So make sure that's at 0% as well. And then we would just go ahead and save. But since I don't need to create this, I won't. So I'll just hit cancel. And as you can see right here, going over the four expense type categories, we did use at least every one of these at least once. So if you find it helpful, feel free to take a screenshot of this and use it for your own chart of accounts for your real estate investing business, if you find that helpful. Also, now that we have everything set up to be able to structure the expenses on a per property basis, how do we do that, right? So now that we have the chart of accounts set up to realize per property expenses, we need to be able to understand how to do that. So in order to do that, we got to go back to the accounting tab and we're going to click this advanced button, right? And we're going to go to tracking categories. So once we're in tracking categories, we can ultimately say tracking category name property. And then for category options, this is where we will put the property, the address of the property would be probably the most convenient, whatever you feel is best. We could put all of that underneath category options. So Xero does allow for up to two tracking category names with up to 100 tracking category options. So as long as you have less than 200 properties, this shouldn't be an issue. So just that's how I would structure it. And then in terms of, how do we do this? Well, I'll show you why this is important. So if we go to just create a manual journal entry, you're going to see this property tab right here, right? So we can go ahead and choose the property that we want to assign these expenses to. Or if we want to just assign a general business expense, we could choose none, right? So we can ultimately determine what to do best now that we have that property tracking tag. And of course, the account that we'd want to do, we'll just say cost of goods sold. You can see they're all listed here. And we could just ultimately organize these in a way that is most appropriate for your business, okay? And the one last thing I want to discuss is, and let me go back to the chart of accounts so I can show you, is, well, what if we have a general expense that has the same name as the per property expenses, which is not too uncommon, right? So I'll just do this as an example. So advertising was one. So this is highlighting why it's important to essentially name your per property costs with essentially that sub account naming mechanism, because this advertising account would most likely be utilized for the general business. We wouldn't want to commingle those on a per property basis. So we can ultimately do that, or at least have a better understanding of where things go by that naming convention, by having the parent name account in front and then essentially the de facto sub account at the end. And that's how we can structure it to where we don't really commingle any of these potential expenses between business and on a per property basis. So that is how you set up your chart of accounts in Xero. Hopefully you all found this video helpful. Make sure you like this video, subscribe to the channel for future tips and tricks like this. And also, if you are a real estate investor with any bookkeeping questions, there is a link in the description to schedule a time on my calendar. I'd love to have a chat with you then. So thanks again and look forward to seeing you in my next video. Have a great day.